You are 34 years old, and you just declined a dinner invitation because you did not have $40 for your share of the bill. You texted back that you had plans. You did not have plans. You had $23 in your checking account and 4 days until payday, and a transmission warning light that appeared this morning that you are choosing not to think about yet. This is not a story about being irresponsible. You work. You show up. You pay what needs to be paid. This is a story about what zero net worth actually feels like on a Tuesday night in a city where everyone around you appears to be fine, and you cannot figure out why the same effort that keeps them comfortable keeps you exactly at the edge. The answer is not effort. The answer is structure. And structure is what changes at every single level between where you are right now and $50 million. This is what each level actually looks like from the inside. Zero net worth in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada looks statistically similar despite the different currencies and different safety nets surrounding it. The average American carries over $6,000 in credit card debt. The average Canadian carries personal debt exceeding $70,000, including all consumer debt categories. The average British household has less than $1,500 in accessible savings. The numbers are different. The experience is identical. The checking account is the entire financial picture. The debt payments consume the portion of income that should be building something. The emergency fund does not exist, so every emergency becomes a credit event that adds to the debt that consumed the emergency fund money in the first place. The cycle is mechanical, and it continues mechanically until something structural interrupts it. The interruption costs $100. That is the minimum viable first move. $100 leaves your account automatically on the day your paycheck arrives and moves to a separate savings account at a different institution. Ideally, a high-yield account paying 4 to 5% in the current rate environment before your spending brain has registered that the paycheck arrived. The $100 is not the point. The mechanism is the point. You are building the reflex of allocating before spending rather than saving what survives spending. That reflex, once embedded through repetition across 6 consistent months, is worth more than any investment return available to someone at zero, because it is the foundation every return above zero is built on. Without it, the returns land in a leaking bucket. With it, the bucket starts holding water for the first time. $10,000 net worth in the UK feels different from $10,000 net worth in Canada, which feels different from $10,000 net worth in America, but the psychological shift is identical across all three. The 2 a.m. financial math stops. Not because $10,000 solves everything, because $10,000 means the next unexpected expense does not automatically become a debt event. The boiler fails in a British winter, and it costs $800 to repair, and you pay it from the emergency fund, and the emergency fund drops, and you rebuild it, and the entire sequence happens without a credit card being involved. In Canada, the car needs $1,200 in brake work, and you pay it and move on. In America, the medical bill arrives for $900, and you handle it. The emergency fund does not make you wealthy. It makes the wealth-building process survivable by preventing the interruptions that reset the compounding clock every time they arrive and get absorbed through debt. The journey from $10,000 to $50,000 net worth is where the Atlantic and Pacific differences in financial systems start to matter in specific ways worth understanding. British ISA accounts allow up to $20,000 annually to grow completely tax-free, the UK equivalent of a Roth IRA with no income limitation. Canadian TFSA accounts allow contributions that grow tax-free with lifetime room accumulating annually regardless of income. American Roth IRA accounts allow $7,000 annually in after-tax contributions that compound forever without taxation on the gains. All three systems offer a tax-free compounding vehicle that the majority of people in all three countries are underusing significantly. The ISA allowance in the UK goes unused by millions of eligible savers every year. The TFSA room in Canada accumulates unused for decades for millions of account holders. The Roth IRA in America sits unfunded while the same people pay 22% tax on investment gains in taxable accounts. The vehicle exists in every country. The decision to use it is what separates the accumulators from the people who stay flat. $50,000 net worth changes your relationship with your employer in a way that nobody explicitly discusses, but everyone who crosses this threshold eventually notices. In London, Toronto, New York, Vancouver, Chicago, and Manchester, the dynamic is identical. You still need the job. The income still matters significantly, but the job no longer holds complete power over your immediate survival. At zero, being terminated means immediate crisis within weeks. At $50,000 net worth, being terminated means a serious disruption that the savings buffer can absorb for several months while a solution is found. The specific power of that buffer is not financial in the narrow sense. It is the power to negotiate, to decline, to push back, and to wait for the right opportunity rather than accepting the first available one out of desperation. That power is invisible from the outside and worth more than its dollar amount in the quality of professional decisions it enables. $100,000 net worth in 2026 is achievable on ordinary incomes in all three countries within a decade of disciplined, consistent saving and investing, and it is the threshold where the compounding math crosses its most important line. A $100,000 index fund portfolio in a low-cost fund tracking the S&P 500, the FTSE All-World, or the Tex Composite at a 10% average annual return generates $10,000 in the first year without a single additional contribution. Someone contributing $500 monthly is adding $6,000 manually. The portfolio is generating $10,000 automatically. The machine now produces more than the person feeds it across 8 months of the year. That crossing is the moment the wealth-building process changes from manual labor to supervised automation, and it is the reason that every financial educator across every country identifies the first $100,000 as the most important milestone in the accumulation journey. $250,000 net worth produces a specific behavioral change in how you handle professional relationships and social dynamics that is real enough to be worth naming honestly. In American, British, and Canadian culture, the social pressure to perform a financial status you do not possess is significant and continuous. The colleague's birthday dinner at the expensive restaurant, the group holiday that costs more than you have budgeted, the neighborhood expectation about the car you drive and the clothes you wear, and the renovations your home displays. At zero, these pressures are handled through debt or through social withdrawal, both of which have costs. At $250,000 net worth, these pressures are handled through a clear understanding of what the money is building and a willingness to decline the performance because the destination is more important than the appearance of having already arrived. $500,000 net worth in the United Kingdom triggers specific estate planning considerations that do not apply below this threshold in the same way. The UK inheritance tax threshold for a single individual is $325,000 with additional residential nil rate band available, meaning estates above this level face a 40% tax on the excess above the threshold. At $500,000 net worth, which converts to approximately $400,000 at current rates, the estate planning conversation becomes financially material rather than theoretical. In Canada, the deemed disposition rules at death mean that capital gains on investments are triggered as a taxable event for the estate. In America, the federal estate tax exemption is currently elevated, but has been subject to legislative change and planning around its potential reduction matters at this net worth level. All three countries reward people who build the structure before the threshold becomes urgent rather than after the urgency is impossible to ignore. $1 million net worth in America, Britain, and Canada no longer means what it meant to the previous generation. In 1990, $1 million represented genuine financial independence in most cities across all three countries. In 2026, it represents a strong foundation and meaningful optionality, but not complete independence from income in high-cost cities like London, Toronto, Vancouver, New York, or San Francisco. A $1 million portfolio generating 5% annually produces $50,000 in returns. In London, that covers rent on a modest flat and basic living expenses and little else. In a mid-size American city or a smaller Canadian market, it covers significantly more. The geography of your million determines what it actually buys in terms of daily life quality and working optionality. This is the calculation most financial content ignores by treating 1 million as a universal milestone with universal implications.
$2 million net worth crosses the threshold where the portfolio income begins to cover genuine living expenses in most markets across all 3 countries without principal erosion. A 5% return on $2 million is $100,000 annually. After tax in the United States at qualified dividend rates, in the UK at the dividend allowance and capital gains rates available to investors, and in Canada through the dividend tax credit system, the after-tax income from a $2 million portfolio ranges from $70,000 to $85,000 annually, depending
on structure and jurisdiction. That is a livable income in most cities in all 3 countries. The principal continues growing. The work becomes optional. The specific feeling of work becoming optional rather than required is one that people who have never experienced it consistently underestimate, and people who have experienced it consistently describe as the single most significant quality of life change money produces. $5 million net worth in all 3 countries places you in the top 2 to 3% of wealth holders nationally. The problems at this level are qualitatively different from the problems at 0, and they are worth naming honestly, because the transition from lower-level problems to upper-level problems is not comfortable in the ways people expect. At $5 million net worth, the relationships around you begin to reorganize in ways that are difficult to navigate without prior experience of them. People present themselves differently to you. Requests arrive that are framed as opportunities but carry a financial ask embedded within them. The people who knew you at 0 are navigating a change dynamic that neither party has a script for. The wealth creates proximity to new relationships while sometimes creating distance in older ones, and the management of that social landscape is genuinely complex in ways that no financial advisor is trained to help you with. $10 million net worth in Britain, America, and Canada opens access to investment instruments that are legally restricted to accredited or sophisticated investors above specific wealth thresholds. Private equity funds, private credit vehicles, hedge fund allocations, direct real estate syndications, and pre-IPO investment opportunities all become accessible at this level through pathways that are closed below it. The argument for these instruments is not that they are automatically superior to index funds. The argument is that they offer return streams, liquidity profiles, and tax characteristics that complement a large portfolio in ways that produce better risk-adjusted outcomes across a full market cycle than a single asset class can produce alone. At $10 million, the complexity is justified by the scale. Below it, the same complexity produces friction without proportionate benefit. $25 million net worth requires governance that most people who build to this level have not prepared for, because the preparation feels premature during the building phase and urgent during the transfer phase, when urgency is the worst condition under which to build governance. Family investment policies that define how decisions are made, how distributions are authorized, how new family members are incorporated into the financial structure, and how disagreements are resolved are the infrastructure of multi-generational wealth in all 3 countries. American family offices, British family trusts, and Canadian family holding corporations all serve the same structural purpose through different legal mechanisms. The family that builds this governance while the wealth creator is alive and engaged builds something that survives the transition. The family that defers it builds something that the transition process spends down. $50 million net worth is a perpetual motion machine if it is built correctly, and a generational transfer event if it is not. The endowment model at this scale, spending less than the annual return and retaining the difference as growth, produces a pool of capital that is larger in 30 years than it is today, without any additional contribution from anyone. Your grandchildren in Boston, Bristol, or British Columbia inherit a larger structure than the one you built. They sit on advisory boards, because the family name carries the weight of decades of compounding. They have access to opportunities at birth that you spent a lifetime building toward. This is what generational wealth actually means when the structure is correct, not a large inheritance. A system that produces abundance across time horizons longer than any individual life. You did not start at $50 million. You started at $23 in a checking account and a dinner invitation you declined on a Tuesday night. The distance between those 2 points is not luck. It is the accumulated result of every structural decision made correctly at every level between them. The structure was always the answer. It just required you to start building it before it felt possible to build.